Assalamu alaikum, Ramia.
Excellent.
I can't believe we're doing this. We've spoken about this for years. We're finally having conversations about women in Ramadan and some of the challenges that we're facing in this sacred month.
Looking forward to it, especially talking from a lived experience and what we have come across, from some of the stories and questions that many women share with us. So I hope that we can unpack this, inshallah, for the benefit of everyone.
Let's get started.
أهديك زهرا وأنت العبير الذي بك كم كان وقتي يطيب أهديك عطرا وأنت.
So Mariam, we're entering this month. I feel it's just, showed up. Ramadan has literally just showed up with barely any warning, barely any preparation and so forth. And I don't know about you, but I sort of enter the month with a bit of anxiety because I know, how is it that I'm going to juggle work and motherhood and parenting and being the daughter and, attending to the community, expectations and so forth. And I feel like sometimes I'm quite overwhelmed in that initial. I don't know. I mean, how do we balance it all? It can get overwhelming.
Yeah, look, I share that sentiment. I actually always, as we approach Ramadan, feel a little bit anxious. Have I prepared enough? Have I done enough? I look at maybe unconsciously, we look at what others are doing around us and we already feel like we're behind before the month's even started. And I think when we look at the amount of noise and the amount of pressure that is facing women, couples, families in society right now, it's no wonder we're all entering feeling a little bit fatigued and tired. When you add to that, of course, global events that are impacting us, the concerns we have for the Ummah, where people are suffering around the world, whether it's Gaza, Sudan, Somalia, Kashmir, how could you not feel fatigued? So it's going to take its toll on women, mostly because we're naturally those carers and supporters. We're usually the ones that are holding the threads of the family together.
I feel like we enter carrying that mental load, like a preparation every single day, having come back from work or having cared for children the entire day, whatever your role looks like this particular Ramadan, we're constantly carrying that load. For example, meal preps and, am I going to have iftars at my house? Am I going to go to iftars? Is that going to add to the pressure? And yes, that noise, especially social media. The other day I was flicking through my social media and I know the intentions are sincere. And I noticed that there was a particular blogger who'd posted an entire, freezer prepped with amazingly packed meals and so forth. And that's wonderful. And I just felt like this, dull, aching feeling within me that, oh my God, I'm so behind. Am I even ready? What am I going to offer my family? How am I going to do it all? I feel like, subhanAllah, having entered the month, we're already sort of depleted and there's this heavy weight, more so on the physical aspect that we barely even give the spiritual enough thought. It's as if it's almost shoved out of our planning because we feel as women in particular, we carry that load, right? I don't know. I just hope that, inshallah, we prioritize our expectations so that we can also reap the benefits.
I think you mentioned a key driver behind a lot of that anxiety, and it is social media. It's not just about Ramadan readiness. It's getting ready in the morning has now become a 100-step, 50-product routine that is exhausting to watch, let alone implement. So when we look at where the pressures are coming from, they're impacting women in a variety of different ways, whether it's the fact that we live in a capitalist economy that values, profit, productivity over, basic everyday values like looking after yourself, slowing down, regulating your nervous system. Now it's all about tick boxes. I'm just thinking to myself every day, I've got to start my day with these hectic routines. I've got to make sure I get my hydration in, smash my 120 grams of protein per day, make sure I get to the gym, get my 10,000 steps in. And that's not even taking into account the fact that I may be trying to hold down a job or care for young children. That's before we've even spoken about ibadah.
Yeah.
This is just getting by every day according to expectations that are becoming increasingly unattainable and unrealistic.
Yeah. I think what's shifted the way I think with this entire sort of overload, if you want to call it that, is obviously intention. And it took me years, and we always talk about intention. I don't think we internalize it as deeply as we should.
So important.
You often feel like your contributions, whatever they may look like and whatever hat you're wearing, because, women wear several hats, hijabs, etc. And not until you actually, I guess, with certainty, and I call it almost yaqeen, right? Yaqeen, accept the fact that whatever I am doing is sincerely for the sake of Allah. Absolutely everything you do is almost, it goes to waste, right? And not only that, it almost harbors this feeling of anger and resentment, because you can't be doing what, say, your spouse is doing. You can't be doing what other women who are at a different pace in their life are doing. What I'm doing now, I wasn't doing 5-10 years ago, which you're doing now, right? Caring for little ones, for example. So those things change and evolve over time, and you have to realign your attention. Otherwise, I feel like it used to bog me down significantly, in a sense where I felt like, caring for children and just adhering to the standard routines in the day of, the blessed month of Ramadan by way of chores was just, time wasting. Where in fact it is ibadah, and we haven't been programmed enough to really accept that. Ibadah in our definition is always literally, up the Quran recitation, which is fantastic, attend tarawih, pray extra prayers, absolutely. But these things are very circumstantial based on your individual position in your life and so forth.
That's so true. And I think if we're going to talk about physical load, you cannot talk about the load women carry without acknowledging the mental load as well. It's the scheduling, the planning, the organising. It's always thinking about, have my children had enough, particularly in Ramadan. Kids can sometimes have some health issues around not being hydrated enough, not eating enough fibre. So we carry these concerns daily on top of the physical load. It becomes like, a burden that we have to somehow shift. And intention is the key to shifting that burden, right? So you're right. It's very easy to get caught up in the usual routine of getting up in the morning, waking children up, making breakfast, putting a load of washing in, preparing for the day, and then forgetting that everything you did from the minute you opened your eyes, if it was done sincerely for the sake of Allah, becomes an act of ibadah in Ramadan.
Absolutely.
The rewards of which are multiplied,
yeah.
Right? And that is where I look for the relief. Like if I was to say to you, my days are, hectic, if I tried to define what hectic means, it would look like a mess that you could never see the light through. But the intention, changing that intention and being mindful that everything that I'm doing for the sake of Allah carries a reward is where the relief comes from.
And you won't be forsaken. Like surely if you are, because of your circumstances in life, you're having to care for children or elderly parents or a sudden illness in the family or whatever, surely Allah is not going to forsake you in the extent of reward that He would otherwise give you. And I remember this very clearly, subhanAllah, many years ago when my grandmother was in her end of life phase, and subhanAllah, it happened in Ramadan. So she was end of her life during the month of Ramadan. And we would take, turns between, grandchildren, aunts and so forth to go and be by her side in the hospital and so forth. And I would almost question, this is me talking to myself, it's Ramadan, I should be reading Quran, I should be doing ibadah, I should be praying tarawih, I should be. And I had to constantly put myself in check and say, no, surely there's more reward in this by, relieving or being by the side of a loved one and so forth, or someone who's unwell. And surely Allah is going to reward me in the same way that I would have otherwise attended tarawih, for example. So sometimes you do need to talk to yourself and just realign that intention, and don't be hard on yourself. We're quite hard on ourselves.
Comparison really is the thief of joy. So it's really going to be hazardous to your Ramadan, to your mental, load, to your mental health, if you continue to compare yourself to those that have it better than you. And we have to remind ourselves that what we're seeing, particularly on social media, is a carefully curated profile that only shows you the happiest moments, the most productive moments, the best version of that person on social media. And research is now telling us that these are often some of the most unhappiest of people.
I see that.
You
I
know?
see that in my office
Yeah,
day in, day out.
It's very rare that you see the other side of what that life looks like.
The reality.
The reality of
Yeah.
it, you know, and we need to ground ourselves in the reality. Often what we're seeing is unattainable, you know, whether it's because you don't have the money to afford their products, their beauty products, their lifestyle. It can almost put you in a state of anxiety if you sit there scrolling through these profiles thinking, I don't have that. I consider myself quite a strong-willed person. Yet even if I scroll through very similar content,
Can be influenced.
I can find myself doubting, you know, what I have, what I'm doing. And that's my cue to detox off social media.
Absolutely.
And when I was, you know, I was a personal trainer for many years in my life, and a lot of my clients would come to me and say, I don't know why I'm putting on weight. So I used to get them to keep a food journal. When they used to hand this food journal in at the end of the week, 90% of their weight gain was snacking on foods that were, you know, really high in calories and not very good for their health. And so the solution was, don't buy the snacks. If they're not in the cupboard, you're not going to eat them. And I carry that same mentality into the destructive forces on social media. I'm not saying it's all bad, but when you do feel like it's impacting your mental health because you find yourself comparing yourself to others, just detox off that social media.
And that comparison could also be a good comparison. You know, you see those sharing positive, I guess, motivating reminders and so forth, or you know, where they are at in their spiritual sort of progress during the month, which is great, but that can also have a negative effect on you because you are comparing yourself to someone who may not be in the same circumstances as you are. And I remember this very clearly, again, when I was at that stage of caring for young children. And I would see, you know, sisters attending Taraweeh and clocking off the first khatma, the second khatma and so forth. And and it's great. The intention is genuine. It's to encourage women and you know, others to push themselves because Ramadan is that time to push yourself. But it also can have a negative impact. So my advice, if I was to ever talk to my younger self, would be, you know, accept your circumstances for what they are at the time and don't compare yourself to anyone. And you're the best of judges. You can only judge yourself as to whether you've pushed yourself enough that Ramadan or this particular coming Ramadan. And, you know, hold your own self to account. Don't allow others to be the measure for what you can and cannot do. And you have to be honest. Like I know, for example, if I could have pushed myself better, and I know also if I have been distracted. So if social media is a distraction and it does not serve as a sort of a opportunity to motivate me and improve me and push me, and in fact, I leave social media feeling depleted and anxious, then I will cut off this particular month. So we need to be very cautious of those unhealthy snacks that do impede on our mental health, but also our spirituality, I think, during the blessed month.
Yeah, you mentioned something recently about Ramadan not being a race, about it being the training ground. And this is probably the only month in the entire year where cutting down on social media, prioritizing your sleep, your nutrition, your ibadah doesn't carry any guilt.
Yep.
You know, because everybody knows the sacred nature of Ramadan, and none of us are guaranteed to see, you know, the Ramadan that comes after this one. So you really need to take advantage of it. And coming from the perspective of spending the last 11 months with people who thought they were going to make it, and Allah had other plans for them, just makes me value entering this month so much more. But when we talk about subgroups of women, you know, not all women obviously carrying the same load. So, you know, we've had women in the last year that have stepped into roles that they had not assumed, say, 11 months ago, and that's adding to the layer of responsibilities that they're carrying. You know, we've got women who've recently become widows that are now in the throes of having to reorganize their entire lives around the fact that they no longer have a husband there by their side. We have women who are caring for children with special needs, women who are caring for multiple young children.
Their parents.
They're caring for elderly parents. You know, all of those caring roles come with responsibilities and challenges. And so how do we navigate those different challenges that we're seeing that are going to make us feel a little guilty that we haven't prioritized our ibadah because we're all carrying a unique load?
Absolutely. But again, intention, reframing and reprogramming the way that we think entering the month, And not only that, just going back to the point of treating Ramadan as the training ground as opposed to the race, and that's a mistake that we fall into. I guess because of that collective nature of Ramadan, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's in a state of ibadah and positive and good competition, the competition you want to see between everyone. What happens is it's almost like everyone's reaching a peak and a climax, and then come literally the first or second day of Eid and you've absolutely lost all that training. You know, almost similar to the work that you've done in you know, the fitness and health industry. What's the point of you having to sort of go through that grueling routine for 30 days to just let go of it? And my message is, I personally, what I do is I track the things that I enjoyed by way of ibadah from the previous Ramadan. So every Ramadan, for example, focus on a particular act of worship that you indulged in and you enjoyed, right? And try to extract that outside of Ramadan.
That's a good point.
And as women, I don't feel, again, because we're not present, we're literally in autopilot mode all the time. We don't actually slow down, self-observe, self-interrogate, and then also, you know, just reflect on, okay, what did I enjoy? If I really enjoyed Salah, for example, and Taraweeh, okay, how can I extract part of that and include an additional prayer? You can't pray Taraweeh every single day, 11 months of the year after Ramadan. But how can I add a Salah to that by way of Sunnah or Duha prayer or whatever it is? If I enjoyed Quran, what's a realistic goal that I can take outside and implement that in the other parts of the year? Dua, tasbih, don't underestimate the things that you enjoyed. And I think for me, being present in Ramadan is what really matters. So not just autopilot mode, yes, rush, because life's literally on the run in Ramadan. By the time you finish that iftar, you're packing the table, you're getting ready, praying Taraweeh if you do go to Taraweeh, or praying at home. You're ticking boxes, literally, and then, you know, it's good, alhamdulillah, if you're able to achieve that. But it's also about being conscious and present. What did I indulge in? How can I take what I enjoyed in this month? Because it is meant to be an enjoyable month. It's a month where we are literally nourishing the ruh that's been deprived for 11 months of the year. It's the only time that we're feeding our ruh. What can I do to take, you know, outside of that month and, you know, include that as part of the race that remains for the 11 months of the year?
I really like that point about finding what you liked and holding on to it. So this Ramadan, for me personally, I'm a mother of 5. 2 of my youngest are still under 3. I'm studying my master's. I'm still working part-time. I still find a lot of joy in giving back to community. So I don't think I can ever put that on the back burner. So, my time is limited. There are certain things that you have to sacrifice in order for you to prioritize your Ramadan. If it means, giving up watching TV, switching off those social media apps, or at least turning the notifications off so you're not as distracted. For me, what's become sacred, even in the lead up to Ramadan, is spending a little bit longer in sujood. So even if it is just a few seconds in that last sajda that you're making, where you're pouring your heart out to Allah Azza wa Jal, you're asking for things, you're making sure that you're prioritizing what your soul needs and your connection with Allah, just by adding those extra few seconds at the end. The other important hack for me has been spending a couple of minutes longer at the end of the salah doing my adhkar. It's so easy to, literally as soon as you make that last, salamu alaikum, you're already undoing the scarf that you're wearing, and you realize that your phone beeped in the background, your son's crying, you've left something on the stove. Just give yourself that time to pause and say your adhkar. When you actually time how long it takes to do it, it's barely 2 minutes.
I know.
Right? So consciously say, I'm not going to move from this prayer mat for these next 5 prayers of the day until I've said my adhkar.
Absolutely. And being realistic, look, especially if you're at work and so forth, you may not have the luxury to do that, right? Even in Ramadan, because Ramadan is not a time necessarily where you have the privilege to stop work and so forth. Life still goes on.
Life still goes on.
So I know for me as a female who, again, juggles many hats and so forth, at least pick 2 or even 1 prayer that you can apply that to, if you don't have the luxury of doing it for the 5 prayers. For me, it's Fajr and Isha, for example. Generally speaking, they are quiet, moments in the day where you're not bound by deadlines and so forth, especially post-suhoor, where you've, prayed that Sunnat al-Fajr, you've prayed your Fajr, there's time of, subhanAllah, tranquility.
The world is quiet.
Yeah, everyone's, everything. That's it. Everyone's completely, in their own.
My favorite time of the day.
Absolutely. So again, realistically, if you cannot apply this for the 5 prayers, if you can, absolutely. But if you cannot, realistic goals. Fajr, even if it's Maghrib, forget it, it's impossible because we're rushing for iftar, but Isha as an example. But I think it's always about setting realistic goals, whatever works for you. Ultimately is what we should bring out in our own personal spiritual journeys, especially during the month, inshallah.
Yeah, sounds realistic.
أهديك زهرا وأنت العبير الذي بك كم كان وقتي يطير